Hello everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore here, and welcome to the MuseScore Café. So this is my regular series we do every Wednesday. You all can see me here and are doing the chat even though I'm not. One moment to fix hope back. Nice. Okay. Let me close this window, open this one. All right. Good. Um, Okay, so anyhow, we're gonna talk not exclusively about tablature, but we're gonna talk some about tablature because it's a topic that I know a lot of people are interested in, and it came up during the Jumpstart. Be asking questions about this, and if anyone here is like a guitar kind of expert, or you don't have to call yourself an expert, but if you think you might know a thing or two worth sharing about guitar notes or just about the mechanics of playing the instrument, let me know. Um, Something about glitchiness. Uh, uh, my chat was a little glitchy, so I'll tell you what. I'm going to try refreshing my screen. So I'm still working on it. I think maybe you could hear me through my other computer here. But I'm glad this didn't happen on Saturday, right? Saturday, we were gloriously free of these sorts of glitches. Let me know if you can hear me now. I'm talking into my other computer. But I'm attempting to refresh on on my main computer, and the refresh is not going so well. So let's hope for the best. Okay, good. So I'm going to keep talking while my computer finally came back over here. Definitely not a good sign that that took as long as it did. So I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, so give me a moment here. And I'll make sure all my settings are good. I don't need, I need that, I need this, I need that. Okay. But now I'm still hearing echo. I should not be hearing echo. That's unfortunate. Oh, no, I know why. I know why. Sorry. My bad. There we go. Okay. Go in the chat and let us know about that. But meanwhile, I am going to show you some music. So let me get my screen share happening again, hopefully. Screen. Really? My picture's frozen again? Not good. Not good at all. Still, huh. Back again. All right. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. The recording is good to know. And here again, if people can fill me in on more details, I would love it. But the history of guitar as an instrument kind of really goes back a long ways, in some ways longer than the history of keyboard instruments, right? Things like lutes and so forth were, big throughout the Renaissance and earlier. And the notation, tablature notation, that we think of now, at least some of us now might think of tablature as this thing for rock guitarists who don't read music because they're like, I don't know, it's inferior or something. Let's put that aside. Let's put any bias we have against tablature aside. Guitar is not an instrument that was designed around the idea of standard notation, and its standard notation is not very I won't say it's not useful for guitar. You can absolutely, so on and off. Yeah, this is unfortunate, but it's, I guess, the way it's just going to be. Let me try this one more time. Uh-huh. Yeah, we'll just see. I'm just going to keep talking. So, tablature, like on a guitar, like every given note, like if we're looking at this piece here, if you can see it okay, that very first note, B flat, that B flat can be played in several different positions. Actually, that's not true. That B flat on a standard tuned guitar can only be played on the low E string. But this D here could be played on a number of different positions. It can either be played on the B string at the 4th fret, or at the G string at, I guess, the 8th fret, 7th fret. I don't know. I have to do math, and so forth. So a lot of notes can be played in multiple places on the fingerboard, and that really complicates the process of reading standard notation. So tablature is designed to circumvent that by just telling you, just put your finger here. Now, it is unfortunate because then you can't see the nice relationship. Like I can look at this music right here and see, hey, look, there's a B flat major triad in that first measure. And then I can see the next measure is an F7 chord, right? By looking at the pitches, I can see what's going on in that way. If you read tablature well, you can do that. You can learn to do that in tablature also. I'm not going to say that I'm there, but it absolutely is possible to learn that. So yes, Allison is mentioning that there's a variety of different types of tablature that were used in the Renaissance, what are called the Italian, French, and German styles. German style is one that maybe we don't see so much anymore, but they're variations on how the tablature is done. And the MuseScore tablature support was designed and implemented by someone who was a Renaissance specialist. He was a viola da gamba player. And so he designed the tablature system to support all the Renaissance styles well. And so there's all sorts of options and things to try to support Renaissance tablature. As well as, he really didn't care about implementing rock styles of tablature, but he made sure that it would be possible to do that. And so that is what we have now. So this is what tablature looks like. It looks like a staff. I mean, it is a staff, but it's a staff that's each line of the staff corresponds to a guitar string or a lute string or whatever string, or whatever instrument you're playing. So if you're playing a 4-string bass, it's going to have 4 lines there. If you're playing a mandolin, it'll have 4 lines, etc.
Ukuleles usually have 4. Banjos will have 5. Lutes can have multiple, they can have lots of strings. And at some point, the convention developed that no matter how many strings you have on your lute, let's not do any more than like 7 or 8 lines on the staff. And we're going to use ledger lines and funny other symbols to indicate the lower strings. So that became a thing with how lute works. So anyhow, these 6 lines correspond to the 6 strings on a guitar. And so this lowest string is the lowest line on the staff is the lowest string. This is normally your E string. And then the second line is your A. Is saying put your finger on the second fret of the A string. Well, each fret is a half step, right? So A on the second fret gives you a B. So this note 2 here so yeah, so that's the deal. So fretboard diagrams are, that's a good point. Fretboard diagrams are more about playing chord shapes where you just want to put the chord down and then strum or finger pick or something. So those are also in very common use by guitar players in a rock or folk kind of style where you're mostly just playing from chord symbols and then providing your own accompaniment. But tablet chord shape, but contain no rhythmic information whatsoever and are kind of incapable of showing passing tones and things like that. But they are similar in that they are a physical representation of the instrument, where standard notation is not. Standard notation is designed to be instrument agnostic, right? To not care what instrument it is. And yes, absolutely, classical guitarists will love to see the standard notation, assuming they learn to read it well, which, you know, if you're going to become a top-notch classical guitarist, you do want to read from standard notation. If you look at the tablature here, look at all the information that's not present. These notes are half notes. That's a quarter note. This is a dotted half note tied into the next bar. This is rhythmic information. So if I'm cutting out, I don't know if I'm cutting out for everyone or just some people, and I don't know if the recording is going to work. So I'm just going to keep talking and we'll see what happens. During this, both on the tablature staff and on the standard staff. And we'll talk about some of the things that are going on here, the use of multiple voices here, which is very common to how guitar music is notated. So I'm going to go ahead and create a score set up this way and start entering notes into it, and we'll see kind of what happens with it. All right. So I'll come over to MuseScore. I'll tell it I want to create a new score. And I'm going to choose the template that says under the solo section, guitar plus tablature. What this is going to do is give me a score in which I have a standard notation staff and a tablature staff, and they're going to be linked. So if I enter a note onto the standard staff, it's going to show up on the tablature staff and vice versa. And I'm going to go ahead and tell it I want D major, and what's it in 3/4? I already forgot. Was this thing in 3/4? Yes, it was in 3/4. So I'll say 3/4. And was there a tempo marking? I should have paid attention to all those things. 108. And I will just call that good. So I'm going to put in 108 here as my tempo. And here's my score now. So what we'll see here is if I enter a note, like if I want to start entering that piece, and I'm not going to get really detailed about entering this piece, but I'll just get a little representation here. Let's see, here we go. That plus MuseScore equals I'm happy. So the first thing that I'm going to need is voice 1. So first of all, let's sort this out. What's happening here? There are, how many voices do we see here? If you can see and hear me, I don't know. I'm going to ask the question and then you can answer if you hear. How many voices do you think are going on here? Well, I'm going to tell you that my gut tells me there's at least 3. At least 3. Are there more than 3? So first of all, there's eighth notes. There's, I'm going to play this on the piano. We have eighth notes arpeggiating, right? So we have eighth notes going on here, but we also have good. So some people can hear at least. So we have D, D. That's a second voice, and then we have B. But what about this F sharp here? This F sharp is yet another voice. I think it's 4 voices. Stephen, I think you got it right. There are 4 voices in here. I hear 4 voices. I don't know. That's a Star Trekism. It's not really, but some of you are nerdy enough to know what I'm talking about. There are 4 voices going on. So one voice, the first voice has just that melody. D, D, F sharp, F sharp. And one voice has the and one voice has the and one voice just has that F sharp, only that F sharp and nothing else. First beat. And that's okay. That can happen because it's pretty clear what beat that F sharp happens on because it's there's that 3 there, and I suppose I should just come over a little bit more so we can see the rest of that measure. We see the 3 here and the 3 there. So as soon as I enter those Ds, MuseScore picked a 3 for me. Now the thing is, I mentioned before that D could be played in multiple locations. I said it would be the 3rd fret of the B string, and then I said it was like the 7th or 8th fret on the G string. Okay, I'm going to go with 7. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to enter onto the tablature staff. First of all, so if I want to enter notes onto the tablature staff, I'll come down here, go into note input mode, and then when you're on a tab staff, notice what's going on here. The cursor is not full height. It's not like this long vertical bar like it is on a standard staff. It's only showing one string at a time. So you have control as I press the arrow keys of what string I'm entering a note on. So if I select half note as my duration on the toolbar, and then I type the number 3, it's going to enter that fret mark, 3 on that B string, and D automatically shows up on the standard staff. Now, the thing is, as I mentioned, there's multiple places that could have been entered. So if I switch to quarter note, what if I wanted to put a 7 on my B string? Well, I can do that. I move the cursor down to the B string, and now I'll type 7, and I also get a D. So MuseScore knows how to make that calculation, right? If you enter a number onto the tablature, it will automatically put the correct pitch onto the standard staff. Now, the thing is, going in that direction is foolproof. If I say I want 3 on the B string, there's only one note that could possibly be D. If I say I want to put fret 7 on the G string, MuseScore knows that that means a D. However, when I write a D, MuseScore has no way of knowing which of these Ds to put in the tablature. So unfortunately, if you try to notate something in standard notation, MuseScore will do something with the tablature. It'll put something down here, but it might not be playable, right? You might end up with situations where it's asking you to play a note on the 7th fret on one string and a note on the 1st fret of another string at the same time. And if that's not possible. Like my hands can't stretch that much. Well, actually, 7th fret. Yeah, you could probably reach to the 7th fret. I don't know. Depends on which fingers we're talking about, actually. But if you tried to play a note on the 1st fret and a note on, say, the 11th fret at the same time, your hand just can't do it. So MuseScore is going to have to make some decisions about where to put these things, and it's not smart. It's always just going to pick the lowest fret. And often that's the right answer, but not always. So I noticed there was a mention about linking the standard to the tab, and I think I may have missed a question that led to that, but I am going to show how you can add these linked staves later. Because remember, I created this score by saying, give me by using a template that has this setup linked already. What I want to do now is I want to show you how to create that link afterwards. So I'm going to go to the instruments panel and add myself another guitar. I'm going to say, hey, what if I want another guitar? And I'll go to strings plucked and pick acoustic guitar. Now you'll notice acoustic guitar or classical guitar, there's both a tablature and a standard one, but there's not the linked thing as one instrument. I got to pick one or the other. Well, I'll pick the standard one and then say, okay. And so now I have a standard staff here. If I want to get myself a tablature staff, if I come over to the instruments panel on that instrument I just added and click the gear icon, sorry, not the gear icon. I guess I need to expand. I need to click the little arrow next to classical guitar, and then I'll see an add staff button. If I click the add staff button, well, now I have 2 staves for guitar, and I can select that second staff, and I can use its gear icon to change it to tablature. And now I have a standard staff and a tablature staff for that second guitar. But when I enter a D, notice it's not linked. So I created a second staff, but it's not linked because that's not how you create linked staves. So I'm going to undo those 2 changes. So instead of clicking that add staff button, the way we're going to add a linked staff is we're going to select the staff that we're starting from, which is classical guitar 2, the only staff that's there. We're going to select that staff and go to the gear icon and create a linked staff right here. Now we have a linked staff, and if I enter a D, it shows up on both staves. Of course, when I did that, it didn't know to make it tab. It probably could have guessed I was going to want tab, but it didn't. So this is that linked staff that just got added. It even says the word link on it. Now I can click that guy and go to its gear icon and change it to one of these tab styles here. So I'm using the simple style, and I'll talk about what these styles are in a moment. Now, if I enter a D, it is linked. So that process using the instruments panel is indeed different than MuseScore 3. MuseScore 3 made you open a separate modal dialog. So you had to do all your work in a separate dialog, and then you couldn't see what happened in your score until you pressed OK. And you couldn't work in your score while that dialog was open. MuseScore 4 puts all of this in an always open panel over here, so it's a little easier to work with. And you can be actually adding your notation and then say, oh, I want to change that from simple to common style. And then you can do that while still seeing your notation, see it update in real time and everything. So it's definitely a better system in MuseScore 4. But if you're used to the MuseScore 3 system, it takes legitimate. That's part of how music notation works. The spacing is designed to tell us something about the rhythm. So you can tell some things about it by doing that. Now, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell, is that a half note and a quarter, or is it a dotted half note followed by a quarter? Because there's not even a time signature showing up here. Or is that, I don't know, a half note tied to an eighth and then an eighth, right? There's not really a specific indication of the rhythm, but you can definitely tell the first note is longer. And to be honest, a lot of tablature in like rock music depends on also playing by ear. It's assumed that if you're playing a piece by tablature, you've also heard the piece, so you basically know how it goes. And so you know what the rhythm should sound like, and then you use the tablature to just tell you where to put your fingers. But it's not very precise. So there are different styles of tablature around in the world, and you will find published music using all of these. You'll find some published music using this simple style, and you'll find some published music using this style that MuseScore calls the common style. I don't know how common it really is, but whatever. So in the common style, you can see that there's a stem here indicating something about the rhythm, and rests are actually showing up on the score. And if I put more notes here, let me put some eighth notes in here. Oh, by the way, if I go to note input mode, you know, I usually use keyboard shortcuts. And if I want to enter some eighth notes and I want to type 4 for an eighth note, let's do that. I'll come over here and type 4 for eighth note. Oh, what did that do? 4 enters your fret number, right? So the number keys do not select duration in tablature. Instead, we're going to use shift plus the number. So shift 4 is what's going to select eighth note duration. Shift 4 selects eighth note duration, and now I can enter the fret that I want, which is 3. And then let me delete that. I'm going to hit delete right now, and it should delete that note. Then I want to come down to this string and enter 0, because I'm pretty sure that was the next thing, was a B. Whoa, what did I do wrong? Oh, wrong string. It's 4 on the 4. What did I do? 4. Oh, okay, check that out. Okay, so it is 4 on the B string and 4 on the G string, and that gives me a B. 0 on the had to play 2 notes in a row on the same string, which isn't as simple as kind of playing across the fingerboard. So these are all things about playing the guitar that you want to know. It's not that you would never repeat notes on the same string. No, we do that all the time. But this particular etude is all based on essentially coming up with a chord shape and then finger picking it in a particular rhythmic pattern. So notice that in this style here, that those are eighth notes are showing up as kind of like eighth notes displaying underneath the staff. If I change it to the other style, I need to open up the panel, open up that instrument, select the tab staff. The other older. I think this style is older. And then also we'll notice, you know, there's all these 6-string Italian style, right? So when Allison was mentioning that there's these other styles available, they use these note symbols here. And then there's a French style that uses a different type of symbol still. And apparently it doesn't work with the collision avoidance. So there's that too. So anyhow, those are all different styles of Renaissance tablature. So I think the one that's listed as common is probably the most commonly used style today-ish, but there's lots of variations. And you can customize these styles, by the way. So I've got these notes in here. Let's get some more notes. I'm going to finish entering those notes, and then I can think about what voice I should have put them in. I'm putting the eighth notes in, and I'm entering them as voice 1, and I'm already realizing I shouldn't have put them as voice 1, but whatever. I started to, so I'm going to finish doing that. So I should now have 4, 4, 3, 4. So I'm going to enter that. I'll come down here, make sure I've got eighth note duration selected, and 4, 4, 3. Now notice when I enter a note, the cursor doesn't move forward, right? When you enter a note in standard notation, as soon as you enter a note, the cursor moves ahead to the next beat. That doesn't happen in tablature. Why? Because even though it's not true of this score happens to be mostly arpeggios, guitar music will often have you play chords. And the person who designed it felt it was more important to be able to easily enter a chord than for the cursor to automatically move. And this was a result of discussions and arguments back and forth between lots of people. And that's how it was decided, is that the cursor would not automatically move forward in tablature mode to make entering chords more simple. I'm not going to be at all surprised if in the not distant future, there's going to be an option to control that, so that with the option one way, the cursor moves forward automatically. With the option the other way, it doesn't. But in any case, I've now entered these notes, and I'm going to leave note input mode and now think about the voices and what voices I want to use for what. So let's take a look at our original here and think about this. We already established there's 4 voices. This is not a complicated measure. It's just basically that's all that's going on. It's just an arpeggio, but it's an arpeggio in which certain notes are designed to kind of ring out. So here's the thing, and if any of you are guitar players, I would love to hear your opinion on this. The fact that this D is notated as a half note, and yeah, I still see comments about sound and issues, and I'm just going to continue to just hope for the best on the recording. That's all I can really do. But I would want to know if someone can hear me, and yeah, so Allison, yeah, what I'm showing here is sort of modern tablature. Renaissance tablature definitely looks different. So it doesn't surprise me at all if that's the case. And let me take a look at that. I'm going to just take a look at Allison's example. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. I'm going to download it. And I'll just put it in this folder because that folder is as good as any. And come over and open that thing up. So I'm guessing, Allison, since I know you deal with Renaissance music a lot, that you're going to be looking at either the Italian or the French style that will, in fact, use totally different type of tablature. So let's take a look at that example. So this example here, yeah, so this is using letters instead of numbers. A is 0, B is 1. I think that's how that works. And this symbol that looks like a R is actually a letter C, or maybe that's a symbol for a rest. I'm not sure, to be honest. But the letters correspond to numbers, or maybe A is 1 and something out is 0. I wish I could remember. But yeah, so this is one of those styles. And then the durations are indicated with these flags above. So if I come back to my score here and I change this score to French style, you see something that looks quite a bit like that. And unfortunately, it seems that the collision avoidance isn't smart enough to add some space there. So I'm going to go to my layout palette and add myself a spacer and add some space. There we go. So this is essentially the French style. It uses letter symbols instead of numbers, and durations are indicated with these kind of things that look kind of like modern notes, but they're actually neumes. Well, they're kind of neumes from Renaissance, from black mensural notation. I get all my terms confused, but anyhow, it's the system of rhythmic notation that would have been used at the time. So so that style is supported as well. So let me go back to a style, though, that I can read, but just wanted to show that that is, in fact, available. It's this French style. And I'm going to come over to the common style. And so let's take a look at this now. I've entered these into voice 1, but I just made the point that voice 1 is really not what I want to use. I want the melody to be in voice 1. I want that bass string. I don't know. I'm gonna go with it this way, and you all can tell me if you might have done it differently. I want, since MuseScore is gonna default to stems up for voice 1 and 3, stems down for voices 2 and 4. I know my melody is going to be stem up, and I want melody the most prominent thing, so that's gonna be my voice 1. This bass note is always going to be stem down, so it's either going to be 2 or 4. This note that shows up in the middle of the measure only shows up sometimes, right? Some measures don't have that other voice. So I'm going to make the B here, the bass note, be voice 2. I think that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to let that bass note be voice 2. So I'm always going to have a melody and a bass note, voice 1 and voice 2. The eighth notes are going to be in voice 3, and I'm just going to have to manage the stems manually, because sometimes they're going to need to be down, sometimes they're going to need to be up. And that extra extra note that's there is going to be voice 4, because that's the voice that is only there sometimes, and I don't want to have to, I want to put it in voice 4, so that my voice 1 and 2 are always there. 3 is going to be always there also, and 4 is only going to be there sometimes. So that means I need to move these eighth notes into voice, 3. I want to move these eighth notes into 3. So I'll select that measure, go to Tools, Voices, Exchange voice 1 and 3. Now those eighth notes are in voice 3. Now I can come in and put in the actual melody in voice 1. So Shift 4 to select, no, Shift 6 to select half note, and then, I want to enter this onto the tab staff. So, and as soon as I do this, you'll notice that I'm probably not going to want to use this style of rhythmic notation anymore, because it's going to get too cluttered with that number of voices. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter that melody note. Now notice that that melody note is already here, right? It's already there. So that melody note D is kind of shared between the voices. So if I try to enter in voice 1, so Shift, go to voice 1 with Control Alt 1, and then Shift 6 for my half note, and then type 3. Notice MuseScore says, oh, you can't have 2 notes on the same string. I'm going to put it on a different string for you. Okay, it's going to do that, and what we can then do is just mark it invisible. So I'm going to select that guy and press V, so it's invisible. And now I also want to make, actually, here's what I'm going to do. Yeah, I need to also make this note invisible, because I don't need to see it on the standard staff. So I'll make that guy invisible. And now I can see what I need to see here. And the original had stems down for those eighth notes. So I'm going to click this guy and press X to flip the stem down. not going to lie, this is messy, right? It is absolutely messy. But we got to deal with it. So we're dealing with it. I didn't finish voice one. What I'm going to do is come over to my standard staff here and just go to note input mode with that rest there and just go ahead and type 5D. And it enters that D as a quarter note. And you'll see again, it put it on the 7th fret here. So I'm going to have to play some games with making things invisible again. I'm going to select that guy and make it invisible, and select this guy, make it invisible, and flip these stems down. So it now looks pretty much like the So I'm going to try to do the same. And so, yes, I see people are continuing to have problems, and I have no idea what's going on, but I'm just going to keep going, and we'll hope for better on the recording. Everyone is saying gone now. So let me just see if I can find any evidence of anything. So yes, unfortunately, I have no concept of what might be going wrong. So I'm just going to keep talking. I do see, Shanna, your comment about putting the bass into voice 4, which frankly was my first impulse. That was my first impulse as well. And so nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I think for my purposes, always using voice 2 is going to win in my head, and treating voice 4 as the alternate one that I only use when I need to. So this rest that I just put in voice 4, that's that voice 4 rest. No, that's a voice 1 rest. All these rests don't need to be there. Often you need to show rests when you're using multiple voices, because it's the only way to sort out what's going on rhythmically. But right now, these rests are just ugly, right? They are causing major problems. So I'm going to hide all of those rests. I make that one invisible. Oh, that rest was on the standard staff. That was a rest on the, oh, I see what I did. I must have accidentally entered that voice 4 note into voice 1. Let me do some undos. There we go. This time I'm going to enter into voice 4. Control Alt 4, 5, 0. Now I can enter my 6 F sharp. There we go. I was wondering why things weren't lining up the way I expected. All right. So now things are lining up more the way I expect, but yeah, it's still just completely unreadably ugly. So there's a few more tricks that I need to do here. I am still going to hide these rests. This is the voice 4 rest that goes on this staff here. I notice it's like so far below the staff, you can't even tell what it belongs to. Normally, leading rests are good, but this F sharp, because otherwise it's hard to tell what beat that F sharp came in on. But in this case, that F sharp happens at the same time as another note. So it's obvious it comes in at the same time as that note. We don't need the rest. Make that rest invisible. And so I did that. And I'm going to do the same on the standard, on the tab staff, make that thing invisible. common trick. If you have notes of different durations that are not sharing a stem and you want them to, make one of them invisible. And the one you want to make invisible is the one you don't want to see. I want the half note head to be the one that displays, right? Because in the original, that's what we had. The half note head was the one that displayed. So the other thing that's different here, then I also need to make that 9 go away. That 9 was the other F sharp, and I don't need to see that, so I'll make that one invisible as well. This stem here is kind of too long, right? These stems and that beam is kind of colliding with that B. And so you'll notice that they have shortened it. Normally, the rule is a stem should be an octave long. That B, the stem should extend down to a B below the staff. This D, the stem should extend down to a D below the staff. That's the normal rule for stem length, but it's going to result in this being too much. So I'm going to select this beam and move it up. When you move beams up, there are rules for where the beam can intersect staff lines. They're ridiculously picky and complicated, and I don't know them all, but I am going to tell you that just dragging this thing is not going to make me happy because, actually, when I drag it, it's going in discrete chunks. And so I think the dragging thing is smart enough to partially follow those rules. But what I'm going to do instead is flip that beam again, and this time I'm going to use the arrow keys to move it up a whole staff space at a time, or half a staff space at a time, and try to hopefully obey the rules correctly. Unfortunately, I don't know the rules well enough to know for sure what's proper and what is not, but I know avoiding wedges is a thing. And so I could look up in Behind Bars a little bit more about that, but I just want to clear some space here, and I'm not going to obsess about the proper exact position for that thing. If I do this, does this little triangle here count as a wedge, or is the fact that it's open on one end make it okay? I wish I knew. Is that better? I just don't know. So I'm going to go with it this way. So, yeah, I got into the weeds pretty quickly on what seemed like a simple measure, right? And of course, with audio cutting in and out for at least some of you, it's, just may have been kind of hopeless. But I entered that measure, and now if I compare it to the original, I think we'll see I kind of got it, right? Didn't I? Didn't I kind of get this? D, F sharp, stem down. Oh, but there's some fingerings and this line here. So let's get those in. That's part of guitar notation. So the fingerings, I want to put these guitar fingerings in. These fingerings here are the left-hand fingerings because, we have to know which finger we're going to use in our left hand and which finger we're going to use in our right hand. And usually the left-hand fingerings are the more important ones, and the right-hand fingerings are assumed to be like you can figure it out based on what string it's on, but we can enter them both. So I'm going to try to enter these fingerings now. So I'm going to select, I have to decide these fingerings, like which voice am I going to enter them in on? That this D here, I could enter it into voice 1, but then I still need voice 2 for this one, or voice 3 for this one, and voice 3 for that one. I think I'm going to enter all my fingerings into voice 3, all right? Now, to select voice 3 here, if I just click that note, I'm selecting voice 1. There's a trick to making sure you're selecting voice 3, and that is to select something that is in voice 3 and then use the arrow keys. Now, that D is selected in voice 3, even though it's invisible. So that's my trick. Now that I've got that voice 3 D selected, I can go to add and then text fingering and type in my, I used fingering, but that's not what I want. I want the guitar fingering. So I do this again. Select this guy, back up. To add guitar fingering, we need a palette. Guitar fingering has its own positioning rules, different from piano fingering rules. So what I'm going to do now is go to add palettes and make sure I've added my guitar palette. And now with my guitar palette added, I can open the guitar palette and see those guitar fingerings here. And I will again make sure I've got the right note selected. Cursor back to there, and I want to enter that 2. And now the 2 appears right next to the note, which is the right place for it. Now I'm looking at that going, well, gee, that's too big. It's especially too big on the tablature staff. I'm a little surprised that the fingering is that big by default. I think I'm going to need to shrink it. Their tab staff doesn't show fingering, so I'm going to want to not show fingerings on my tab staff. So yeah, we still got some stuff that we can be doing here, right? We still got some stuff. I'm going to select this fingering. I'm going to go to Properties. I'm going to make it smaller, shrink it down to 7 point, and then ... save as default style. And now my fingerings are smaller. So there's that guy. Let me finish entering these fingerings, and then I'll take care of hiding them on the tab staff. I'm going to double click that too to put it in edit mode, then press space. That's going to move to the next note. Entering fingerings works very much like entering lyrics. You press space to move to the next note. I wanted a 2, and then a 4, and then a 3. So that's what I'm going to do. I will type 4, come back to the right window, type 4, space, 3. And now those fingerings are in there. What I next need to do is make them not show up on tab. Well, yes, I can hide them individually by making them invisible, but there is just an option. I said a lot about tablature is customizable. And right now, I don't want to see all these rhythmic indications because realistically, every single measure is going to be full of eighth notes, right? If you look at the original score, it's basically eighth note city. Let's look at this thing, right? It's like eighth notes every single measure, which is pretty typical in guitar music. It's going to be based on arpeggiating and then bringing out some notes as melody notes. That's a very common type of guitar music. And so in that type of music, this rhythmic indication is not buying us anything. It's just complicating the picture. So I'm going to switch first to the simple style. And I want to see if the simple style also makes fingerings go away, because it might. I'm going to click to open up that instrument again, click this guy, the tablature staff, click the gear icon, and change to simple style. Ha! That hid both the rhythm and the fingering. So it kind of did what I wanted, which is great. If it hadn't hid the fingering, let me just show you how we can customize things a little further. If I right-click that tab staff and then go to Staff Part Properties, then Advanced Style Properties, there's a whole bunch of options here, one of which is to control show fingering. So if I turn on fingering now, it actually won't show up until I hit OK. This is another one of those annoying modal dialog boxes that doesn't take effect until you actually hit OK. But that's the option to control it. These are also options that can control whether your marks are numbers like they are here or letters like they are in French style tablature. And this is also where you can control whether the rhythms are shown not at all like they are here, or whether they're note symbols like they are in French tablature, or whether they're stems and beams like they are in the common style, and whether those stems are drawn through the staff or above the staff, etc. All those things are all in this dialog here. So you can actually customize the tablature. So apparently I turned on fingering, so let me go turn it off again when I was playing around there. So I will again right-click this measure, Staff Part Properties, Advanced Style Properties, and make sure I turn that option off this time. So there you go. That was a lot of work just to enter one measure. Right? Not all guitar music is that complicated, but this one had 4 voices in it. This is one reason why I wanted to show this piece, is to point out that, well, tablature is a topic that, yes, and I showed you how to do tablature. Entering tablature is actually dead simple. You go into note input mode, you select your duration, Shift 5 for a quarter note, and then you can type your notes. 3, and then 0, and then 2, and I'm using the cursor key to move forward, right? That's all there is to entering tablature. Shift number or toolbar to select duration, and then type a number. That's dead simple to actually enter the notes. The real complication of guitar music is going to be this other business here, the fact that there's often multiple voices involved, and often you want to show both a standard staff and a tab staff, and doing that is going to require some complication. Now, before I wrap up here, I do want to point out that one of the complications that I came upon had to do with the fact that, like, I had the same note in the same voice. This D here is in both voice 1 and voice 3, and therefore MuseScore, when entering it into the tab, needed to enter it into 2 separate strings. I could have avoided that complication. The way I could have avoided that complication was not use a linked staff. I could have created a non-linked staff. So if I create a staff right now and then just change this staff to tablature, I could just enter the tablature onto this staff. And I want shift 4, 3, 4, 4. Oh, let's come down here, go down to the 2. I'm not even using multiple voices. I'm just entering everything into one voice. Right? So I just entered all of those notes into one voice. Like, didn't affect the standard notation staff at all. If you're entering music that's got a lot of complications like this with the multiple voices, you might find that simpler. Enter the standard notation using multiple voices, and then enter the tab separately. You might just find that separate. By not using a linked staff, you can have total independence like that, so that I don't have to have that D entered into 2 voices. I don't have to use multiple voices for this. You can't, when I do this now, I'm not seeing the rhythm. I'm not seeing the, I'm not seeing how the multiple voices work, but this is indistinguishable from this. And, this version here has all the notes entered into the right voices. This note here, this measure here, has them all entered into voice 1, but to look at them, they're identical. So to someone reading them, they're identical, right? So you can totally do that. Linked staves are useful until they're not. And when they're not, just know that you could just enter the notes separately for standard notation and tablature. All right, I have one final thing I want to make sure I enter here, and that is this thing that I believe is called a bar marking. And I wish someone could tell me what this really indicates here, this C11 here. I've seen V's, and I gather it's like, I say CII, but this is like a Roman numeral. Does this mean fret 2, and that you do this by by barring fret 2 somehow, or that somehow you shift to the second position? I don't really know what this symbol means, but I know how to enter it into MuseScore, right? So we're going to do that. I'm going to select 2 measures, because that's what it's supposed to be. 1 measure, 2 measures. Select 2 measures, and then I'm entering this line, and I'm going to find it on that guitar palette, I think. Right here. This is the bar line. I assume that's how you pronounce it. So I click this guy, and it enters that bar line, and then I need to edit that text, because right now it says V11. I want it to say C11. I can come over to the Properties panel and then Text, and then change that text to say, C11. And now I have it. I notice that in the original, it wasn't displaying on the tab staff, and I don't know if that's important or not, but okay, I can certainly select the tab staff version and press V to make it invisible. So now I have successfully entered that first measure. I didn't even bother with the second measure, right? I just cheated and entered a dummy measure, but I do want to show you this funny looking thing here, the 8th notes between there. So I'm going to go here and enter, it was an F sharp down here and a D up there. So notice that he has chosen to draw the beam between the notes so that it doesn't get in the way. This is like a personal decision you can do if you feel like having the beam above the note or below the note is going to kind of confuse things and collide with other voices, you can totally do this. And all I'm going to do is select that beam and use the arrow keys to just move that thing down until it's between the staves. There you go. Now he did it. His beam is going the opposite direction of the notes, right? The notes are going up and his beam is going down. That's considered bad form normally, but this looks terrible also, right? This looks just strange. Subjectively speaking, if you're going to do that, this looks so weird. I kind of liked his version, so I'm going to drag one end up and the other end down so that it just looks a little more like a beam, because otherwise I don't even know that I would have recognized that was a beam. It was so weird looking. All right, so there you go. This got complicated fast, but I don't know. We cover different things in this cafe, and that's what we did today. Something useful, and I know a lot of people couldn't hear a lot of what I was saying, and hopefully the recording is better. And in any case, that's what I had for you today. Next week will be the beginning of a new month, so it'll be an Ask Me Anything session, and we'll specific, not a chord symbol notation. But yes, there are chord symbol notations also in which you might see that, but that's not what was going on there. So anyhow, hopefully this recording comes out all right, and you can hear me there. Tomorrow we'll be doing the music masterclass, and I'm really hoping to see some people with some reharmonizations of some songs that I can talk about. I will be demonstrating. I'll do a demonstration where things don't work well. The demonstration I did for the harmony course, I chose a song that worked out really well, so you could see all the things that were possible. But I'll choose one that doesn't work so well and use that as a demonstration tomorrow during Music Masterclass, and look at some of yours, and then we'll get to look at what alternatives exist. But definitely check out that Project 5 if you're in the Harmony course, and see if you can get something up before tomorrow, because it's going to be a lot of fun, because this is where we're really starting to finally get into the depths of harmony, is by talking about harmonizing melodies. So look forward to seeing you soon. And thanks to all of you who came to the workshop on the weekend. The recordings are available, so you have that also. I will see you all next time. Goodbye.